As COVID-19 vaccines were being developed, researchers were worried that they may not work as well in people who are obese because historically, vaccines haven't been as effective in obese people. But so far, it appears that's not a problem with both Moderna's and Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID vaccines. Right now, about 1 in 3 Americans is obese, and obesity makes people more likely to have severe COVID-19 symptoms. What's worse, historically, vaccines that protect people from viruses, like the flu vaccine, have not been as effective in people who are obese.
It's been shown since we've had antivirus vaccines, from tetanus to rabies to flu to hepatitis, they just don't work as well in people with weight issues, and no one really knows why.
Dr. Michael A. Schneider is the medical director of the Bariatric Surgery Center at Rose Medical Center in Denver. He, like many doctors, was concerned that trend would continue with the COVID-19 vaccines. But new data from the Food and Drug Administration about the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna trials show their vaccines appear to protect obese people equally well.
There's no indication that people will do worse with this vaccine.
Time will tell as to why exactly, but a likely factor here is the new mRNA technology that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines use. They don't use a weakened or inactive form of the coronavirus. Instead, they tell the body to replicate a tiny part of the virus, a protein, on its own. And then after that, the body builds antibodies against that protein, the protein that it made. I'm Tim Lammers, Fox 61 News. Yeah, I keep struggling to find the easiest way to describe that. But with past vaccines, they're introducing something from the outside, maybe a tiny piece of the virus or a dead version of the virus, and then your body reacts against that. But with these mRNA vaccines, not only is your body producing the reaction, it's also producing the thing to which it's going to react. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does. And we heard from the very beginning that this was going to be a different kind of vaccine. So it's interesting now to finally learn a little bit more about what makes it so different.
Yeah, it makes the protein, and then it's going to react to the protein that it made. So your body's taking care of more
teaching your body something new, basically.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Right. And so far, it looks like it's working very well. The side effect profile, a little more intense than the flu shot side effects, but we still only have had, I think, 3 serious allergic reactions in about 100,000 or so, or I think close to 500,000 shots. So,
well, we're catching up with Dr. David Bannock, I believe, in our next hour.
Yeah,
so we'll hear from him.
Yes.